So, hello everybody. Social behavior and social policy are complicated, but politics are more complicated. That's the first part, and there are 3 sections. But there's also a big question. Why on earth would anybody ask those questions? And what those questions are, I will reveal at towards the end of this talk, because there's lots of questions that social scientists ask, which other people don't ask and are very surprised when you ask them. And I found that working in large interdisciplinary and international teams. The 3 sections of are about the dangers of bitness, where the parts take over and the whole gets lost, the distinction between method and methodology, and what that has to do with the object of study, which I'm abbreviating to 2s. And the object of study is, what do you think you're studying? Because what you think you're studying may actually influence how you relate to policy. And thirdly, who defines the object of study, the 2s, and the questions which are then able to be raised, and that's politics too. So politics plays a big part in this talk. First of all, bitness. Here's a cake, and here's a slice of cake. And that's the distinction between what is the whole and what is the part. And I'll come back to that. And then there's 3 items at the bottom. There's a power drill, there's a bowl and a whisk, and there is a little microscope. And the question is, which of those things is the appropriate thing to make a cake? Because that's the method. The whole is the cake. And if you want to make a cake, you don't use a microscope. So it's a question of appropriateness, of working out how the method relates to the methodology. Here's a slide with a lot of questions. Looking through a microscope, these are all about not looking through a microscope is not doing biology or molecular biology. Using litmus paper to test for acidity is not chemistry. These are all examples of bitness. Beware of them, because sciences are underpinned by big theories and debates, and lots of smaller ones too. And there's a list of a few of them. And a lot of these sciences are very closely related. Social science is the same. Doing cost-benefit analysis or cost-effective analysis is not doing economics. Making surveys, using scales, questionnaires is not doing sociology or social psychology. All these disciplines interrelated, they're underpinned by substantial theories and debates. And among those debates are the boundaries between disciplines. Second section, methodology is not equal to method. Methodology is the study of methods and includes the important question of defining the object of study, 2s. There's 2 examples there. The things you could study if you're looking at climate change. The things you could study if you were looking at zoonotic disease. But the point is, all of those things are interrelated, and you can lose sight of the whole by measuring a part or discussing a part. Now, why would you ask those questions, and who would? Why on earth would you ask those questions? Do people catch COVID because they do X or Y or Z, because they are X or Y or Z, because they believe X or Y or Z, or because their ability to act and decide is limited by socio-economic, cultural, political structures? Once you don't ask the last set of questions, the other ones really are not the prime questions. So it's a question of framing your problem. And the big question is what really should be framing the problems. That's the methodological question. It's wholes and parts again. The whole is greater than the part, and there are things called emergent properties. So, methodology, what questions do you ask? And how does that relate to what politicians want to know? And what is the politics of asking particular questions rather than others? And what's the politics of answering questions, which is abutting the question of the role of the expert? Some of us are experts. What's the politics of answering a question if you're asked to be an expert? And there's a scale here, from the micro to the macro, from the molecular to the global. And the questions that you ask may be affected by the question of cost. It's very expensive to do this kind of research. It's also very expensive to do global research. And it's very expensive to do ethnography, detailed social research in, for example, bits of India or anywhere else in the world. Then there's the question of the intellectual habits we all have, the careers we pursue, the power we have. And all those things affect the questions we ask. So there is a politics of questions, and indeed there's a social science of questioning. And methodology, which I've emphasized to you is so different from method, is in itself a political thing because it involves framing the questions you have and therefore the answers you're likely to provide. And there are many parallels here with climate change debates and issues. So what you know, what you choose to know, how you choose to explore it, and what you recommend by way of interventions has to do with methodology, the scale of what you know and how you know it, and that then can lead to suggestions for interventions. And these may all start from unstated methodological assumptions. It's that methodology word again, which is so often misused as though it meant method. I'll pass over this one. Oh, except I will not pass over it. One of the tropes which one heard in the course of the political discussions of COVID in the UK was ministers saying they were being guided by the science. And being guided by the science meant that often they were ignoring the science, but they were saying they were guided by the science because the science and the scientists become part of the politics of the occasion. And here's an example. Distinguished Professor Neil Ferguson from Imperial College, who was absolutely lambasted, and still so, even as recently as yesterday, in some versions of the British press. Horrendous reports and high levels of social media abuse. Here's some examples. Stupid man, how's he ever earned his degree? He needs arresting. There's a number of accounts of what it means to be involved in advising at that level. Marie Gilbert, one of my colleagues from Belgium, has published a book in French, Juste un passage au GT. Richard Horton from the UK has also talked about being an expert. And in this book, there is a remarkable account by Lenig and Rucker on the absolute appalling behavior of Trump in relation to the COVID issue in the UK. I'm going to finish there. Thank you very much.